I've got 5 key takeaways from Andrew Berry's press conference today at the NFL Combine, which I'm excited to share with you all. But first, selfishly, I do ask, if you have not subscribed to the channel yet, please go ahead and do so. Here at Chat Sports, we were able to send 6 delegates up to Indianapolis, but it's a seniority thing. It's the biggest channels get to go. And so in order to be a bigger channel, we need more subscribers. So if you want to send PD to the 2025 NFL Combine, make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. Now, let's get into my first takeaway from Andrew Berry's press conference today, which is there's no real update on Nick Chubb. This was one of the first questions Andrew Berry was asked, and he did not give us any more color to the picture as to whether or not Nick Chubb will definitively be returning, when Nick Chubb will return, how his rehab is going. Here's what he said.
Nick is a popular discussion point. When I said about him at the end of the season, any conversations that we have with him or his reps, honestly, will stay between will stay between us. If anything were to change with his status, you guys would be the first to know when that does happen. Yeah, Chris, he's done a great job. Yeah, you guys know Nick. He works his tail off. He does everything in his power to make sure that he can recover as quickly as possible. It still is very early, and we're 6 months away from training camp. So to say anything more definitively than I did at in the middle of January, it would probably be inaccurate.
I'll be honest with you guys. I don't love that response, and it's not because I think it increases the possibility of Nick Chubb being released this offseason. I don't at all. But I am a little bit afraid of Andrew Berry and the Browns have been very timid to answer when Nick Chubb could possibly be returning, right? Deshaun Watson is expected to start throwing soon. We'll talk about that in just a moment. During that same press conference, Andrew Berry said they expect all their offensive tackles to be ready to roll by week 1, but they have been very coy and very shy with talking about a Nick Chubb return. And I don't think this is a point for the Nick Chubb could get released team. No, I don't think at all. But I do think there is a much more serious risk of Nick Chubb not playing in 2024, or at least for a lot of 2024, than we care to discuss. Is Nick Chubb going to be back for the second half of the year? Will he miss the first month of the year? The Browns shying away from how much time and how Nick Chubb's rehab is going definitely has me concerned that he could be missing a lot more time next season than we care to discuss. So I could just be I am speculating. I could be making something out of nothing. I could be a victim of off-season boredom, but that was my takeaway of I wish the Browns would give a little bit more of a concrete Nick Chubb rehab update. And the fact that they won't, I think that leaves them a little bit of a cushion for, well, we never said Nick Chubb will be back for 2024, or at least a good chunk of 2024. And I think we have to open our eyes to the possibility of him missing a good amount of time possibly. All right, let's move on to our second takeaway from Andrew Berry's press conference, which is Deshaun Watson will begin throwing soon. So while we got no real injury update on Nick Chubb, we got a very real injury update on Deshaun Watson. Here's what Berry said.
Yeah, Mary Kay, that is accurate. Deshaun will begin throwing, next month. He's worked his tail off in terms of his rehab and recovery. He's in a really good place. We're excited, when the spring hits and we can get him back on the field. But he's making really good progress, and we're really excited to see that continue.
I know next month it's April or 2 months from now, whenever Deshaun Watson starts throwing. It's still very early on. We're very far away from the NFL regular season. But I do think it's very important that Deshaun Watson is able to start throwing and working out with the team as soon as possible. Because historically, Deshaun Watson has gotten off to slow starts every single year. Got off to a slow start with the Browns-ish last year. Then he started to pick things up, and then he got injured in the Titans game. Missed a month or so. Then he gets going again. And he gets injured after the Ravens win. Misses the rest of the season. So I think it's very crucial for Deshaun Watson to rejoin the team as soon as possible. That way he can flush out all those, what seems to be growing pains with the Browns and just the overall sluggishness anytime he starts a season or anything like that. And I'd rather have a lot of those issues flushed away in March and April and May, June, and not have them pop up in August during training camp. Also, I think it's worth noting that a rumor has been circulating a little bit around Cleveland that Browns fans should not be expecting a big signing at wide receiver. And if that is the case, well, you definitely need a great season out of Deshaun Watson because the Browns have a great roster. We saw last year. They were capable of going to the playoffs without Deshaun Watson for most of the season. So I don't think the season hinges on Deshaun Watson from a playoff perspective. But from a playoff win perspective, I do think the Browns saw last year, like the defense choked in Houston. There's no denying that. But like you need superstar quarterback play to win 3 games in the AFC. You're going to have to take down the likes of Joe Burrow and Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, 2 of those 3 guys, most likely Lamar Jackson, if you want to go all the way to the Super Bowl in New Orleans, which means they're going to need great play out of Deshaun Watson. And if he doesn't have another great wide receiver opposite Amari Cooper, which I don't think that should make or break the Browns in 2024, you paid him $230 million after all, he should be able to be just fine even if Amari Cooper is his only top guy. You're going to need a really good season from Watson, which means you're going to want to get that rhythm going with the new offensive coordinator as soon as possible. And so him being able to throw in a month is very encouraging and very important. Now, what's your confidence level in Deshaun Watson? Scale it for me 1 to 10 down below in the comment section. How confident you are in Deshaun Watson getting back to that top-tier Pro Bowl status quarterback play. Before we get on to the rest of today's show, I do want to share some information with you guys about our sponsor today, which is Prize Picks. Thanks to Prize Picks, I've had an absolute blast this football season, or this past football season, but the action on the floor is now heating up. Now, what is Prize Picks? I should probably start there. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers. You pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Whether it's tournament season or the fight for the playoff home court, there's no shortage of high-stakes basketball moments this time of year. Get in on the excitement with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app, where you can turn your hoops knowledge into serious cash. Now, I love baseball, so if you want to ride along with me for some season-long player stat projections, these are the ones I'm going with here. I'm taking the more on Mookie Betts' season home run total at 32.5, and I'm also fading Manny Machado. I'm taking the less on him at 30.5. Prize Picks, by the way, even offers injury insurance so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. Say for basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player projection won't count against you and the rest of your entry stays alive. Download the app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first-time deposit match for up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Some other takeaways I've got from Andrew Berry's press conference at the Combine. I'm going to bundle these two together. Andrew Berry announced that the team will be going back to the Greenbrier Resort in West Virginia, where they started training camp last year, and he announced that the team will be doing a joint practice with the Minnesota Vikings in Berea. So, Andrew Berry made both of these announcements during the press conference or shortly after the press conference today. As for the Greenbrier Resort one, I'm pretty excited for this. I ultimately feel like unless you're on the team, I don't think you can have a very strong opinion as to whether or not this is a good or bad thing. I think a big reason for going to Greenbrier and doing these remote training camp starts or just, periods is for a level of team bonding and removing the distractions. And how can I comment on whether or not it's good team bonding or whether or not it's a good distraction remover if I'm not on the team? So if he feels that it was valuable last year, I'm going to take him and Kevin Stefanski's word for it. And I'm excited that they're running it back. I'm sure the players are pretty upbeat about it. I don't know. I'm not one of them. But I would be on board with going on to a nice resort in Greenbrier, West Virginia, a little bit cooler up in the mountains in the hot days of late July, early August. As for hosting a joint practice with the Minnesota Vikings, game on. I mean, the Browns had a joint practice with the Philadelphia Eagles last year, and it's honestly better than preseason football in some ways because both teams are going to play their ones, which you don't usually see during preseason games, and you're going to get a little bit more of a physical and chippiness. And whereas in the preseason games, you got guys battling for a roster spot, and you're going to get some third stringers making some great plays out there, but you're not going to see the starters. And I'd rather see the starters. So I'm all aboard getting joint practices with other teams. So Minnesota Vikings are coming to Berea, which also signals a Browns-Vikings preseason game. Fifth and final takeaway from AB's press conference. Andrew Berry has a trade fetish. He needs to go check himself into rehab because Andrew Berry said that the Browns are going to be making a proposal at the league meetings next month for the NFL to postpone their NFL trade deadline. Now, it currently stays at the last week of October and the beginning of November. But Andrew Berry and the Browns have some very good points for why it should be pushed back a little bit. For starters, when the NFL expanded from 17 weeks to 18 weeks, they didn't move the NFL trade deadline. They added an extra game, but the NFL trade deadline did not reflect that. But another really good point that Andrew Berry made was that the NFL, compared to the other big three sports leagues in North America, their trade deadline, just calendar-wise, is way earlier than every other league. In the NFL, teams play about 44% of their games before the NFL trade deadline. Usually 7 or 8 games depending on when your bye is, okay? In the NBA, you've played almost 2/3 of your game before the trade deadline. In the MLB, very similar, 65-ish%. The NHL, you've played almost the entire season, nearly 3/4 before the NFL trade deadline. And so credit to Andrew Berry and the Browns for kind of calling the NFL out for something that's just a little bit outdated and needs to be updated, which is push back the trade deadline. That way teams have a much better idea going into the final stretch what their needs are, whether they are buyers or sellers, and more importantly, if more injuries pick up, and football's got more injuries than any other sport does, they can make up for those injuries, and they can go out and make a trade if needed. So I'm a big fan of pushing back the trade deadline. Selfishly, I also love just talking about trades. So content creators can rejoice because it's an extra week to talk about trades. But I think this is a great idea by the Browns. Kudos to them for being at the forefront of this, and hopefully it gets approved during the league meetings next month in, I think, Orlando. But how would you grade Andrew Berry as a GM? I ask this question because Chat Sports sent 6 delegates up to Indianapolis, and Chase Sr., who covers our 49ers channel and our Eagles channel as well, he was able to stop by Andrew Berry's press conference, and he messaged me after it. He's like, dude, I had no idea Andrew Berry was this smart of a guy. And I was like, dude, Andrew Berry is one of the most intelligent and articulate GMs, and every time he speaks, I enjoy listening to him. I love listening to Andrew Berry press conferences because the way he conveys information, I feel like you just sit back and you're just smarter for just listening to Andrew Berry. I mean, you can feel the iviness just coming through the headphones when Andrew Berry's at the podium. So how would you grade Andrew Berry as a GM, A, B, C, D, or F? I would give him an A grade. To wrap up the show, let's pick a card. We've got producer Cullen with us today. Cullen, which one do you want to go with?
Tough question. I say for Nick Chubb, we'll go 2 + 4, 6, and 6 of hearts.
6 of hearts? Okay. I'm going to go with Ace of Spades. Ace of Spades! Let's go! Let's go! Ace of Spades! Bingo! That's what I'm talking about. Needed that. Let's go. Ace of Spades. First of the offseason. That's one. That's one, baby. Let's fucking go. We'll see you guys later. Let's go, Brownies. Ace of Spades.